Hello and welcome back to another video of Bite-Sized Game History. In today's video we are going to be talking about the history of virtual reality. However, to start out I will be doing a brief history of VR leading up to what got us to VR in gaming. From then on I will largely only be covering the gaming aspects of VR. If you do enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing for future content. But without further ado, let's hop right into the history of VR. Virtual, as a term, has had the meaning of being something in the essence or effect, though not actually or in fact. Since the mid-1400s, the term virtual has been used in the computer sense of not physically existing, but made to appear by software, since 1959. Now, if we want to get down to the most basic version of VR, you can consider the development of the perspective in Renaissance Europe art and the stereoscope invented by Sir Charles Whetstone, a British inventor in the 1800s, this being the precursor to VR. Now, many of you may not consider a stereoscope to be virtual reality, but it was a device that allowed us to see into something that was not actually there, which is kind of the rudimentary version of VR. Moving closer to the present, in 1910, an initiative by French commanders Colas and Lafont and Lieutenant Clavelinade, I'm sorry if I butchered those, the first ground training aircraft for the military were built. As well, the Tonneau Antoinette, the Antoinette barrel created by the Antoinette Company, seems to be the precursor of flight simulators. Flight simulators have a huge history with VR, but flight simulators have a lot of their own history, and I believe they deserve a video to themselves. Moving into the 1950s, Morton Healing wrote of the experience theater that could encompass all of the senses in effect manner, thus drawing the viewer into an on-screen activity. He built a prototype of his vision dubbed the Sensorama in 1962, along with 5 short films to be displayed in it while engaging multiple senses: sight, sound, smell, and touch, predating digital computing. And now in 1968, we are getting to where VR is a software. A Harvard professor, Ivan Sutherland, with the help of his students including Bob Spruill, created what was widely considered to be the first head-mounted display system for use in immersive simulation applications, called the Sword of Damocles. It was a primitive both in terms of the user interface and visual realism, and the HMD to be worn by the user was so heavy that it had to be suspended from the ceiling, which gave the device a formidable appearance and inspired its name. Technically, the device was an augmented reality device due to the optical pass-through. Now, in between 1970 and 1990, virtual reality industry was mainly focused on providing VR devices for things within the medical field, flight simulation, and automobile industry design, and military training purposes. And we hadn't had virtual reality in the sense of games yet. David M. became the first artist to produce a navigable virtual worlds at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL for short, from 1977 to 1984. The Aspen Movie Map, a crude virtual tour in which users could wander the streets of Aspen in one of the 3 modes: summer, winter, and polygons. The Aspen Movie Map was created at MIT in 1978. In 1979, Eric Howlett developed the Large Expanse Extra Perspective, or LEAP for short, optical system. The combined system created a stereoscopic image with a field of view wide enough to create a convincing sense of space. The users of the system have been impressed by the sensation of depth in the scene and corresponding realism. The LEAP system provided the basis for most early virtual reality headsets. Now, by the late 1980s, the term virtual reality was popularized by a man named Jaron Lanier, one of the modern pioneers of the field. Lanier had founded a company, VPL Research, in 1984. VPL Research had developed several VR devices, including the Data Glove, the iPhone, but like the human eye phone, the Reality Built for 2, RB2 for short, and the Audiosphere. VPL licensed the Data Glove technology to Mattel, which used it to make the Power Glove, an early affordable VR device released in 1989. Atari was the first video game company to found a research lab for virtual reality, or to do anything involving gaming and virtual reality. They created this in 1982, but the lab was closed down only 2 years later after the video game crash in 1983. And this is where we start VR in gaming. I did want to insert in this part here my first experience with anything along the lines of virtual reality was the Virtual Reality World 3D Color Ninja. It was a cheap and rudimentary virtual reality system that started from the late 1990s into the early 2000s. It offered a limited red and black focused gameplay experience. Despite its full color and high-tech marketing claims, the headset featured a basic LCD screen, and gameplay involved simple hand and leg sensors to control a budget Bruce Lee character in the basic side-scrolling action game, not a true 3D world. It was considered a commercial flop, contributing to the failure of VR's early promise in the 1990s, along with issues like cost and comfort, the lack of software support for more advanced VR systems. This was the first VR anything I ever played. While it was very basic, I played it when I was maybe like 7 or 8 years old, and I thought it was amazing. But the world through the lens of a child's eyes is very different. In 1991, Sega announced the Sega VR headset for the Mega Drive home console. It was used LCD screens in the visor, stereo headphones, and inertial sensors that allow the system to track and react to movements of the user's head. In the same year, Virtuality launched and went on to become the first mass-produced, networked, multiplayer VR entertainment system that was released in many countries. It included a dedicated VR arcade at Embarcadero Center. I am butchering that for sure. It was very expensive, costing $73,000 per multi-pod virtual reality system. They featured headsets and exoskeleton gloves that gave one of the first immersive VR experience. By July 1994, Sega had released the VR-1 motion simulator ride attraction in Joypalace indoor theme parks, as well as the new Senkai Netmerc arcade game. Both used advanced head-mounted displays dubbed the Mega Visor display, developed in conjunction with Virtuality. It was able to track head movement in 360-degree stereoscopic 3D environment, and its Netmark incarnation was powered by the Sega Model 1 arcade system board. Now, one of the more common early adaptations of ones you guys might have heard of is the Nintendo's Virtual Boy console, which was released in 1995. I never had played it, I never owned one as a kid, but I did definitely hear about it. Games for Virtual Boy included Tetris, Mario Tennis, Space Invaders, just to name a few. In 1999, entrepreneur Philip Rosedale formed Linden Lab, with the initial focus on development of VR hardware. In its earliest form, the company struggled to produce a commercial version of The Rig, with several computer monitors that users could wear on their shoulders. The concept was later adapted into a personal computer-based 3D virtual world program called Second Life. Now jumping forward a bit further, in 2007, Google introduced Street View, which I am almost certain everybody has seen or experienced at one point in time. Now this isn't gaming in the traditional sense. However, I did want to include this because I do think that is almost like a basic starting point for what became GeoGuessr, a game I'm sure so many of you would be familiar with. And now we're going to get into probably the most recognizable VR device. In 2010, Palmer Luckey designed the first prototype of the Oculus Rift. The prototype was built on a shell of another virtual reality headset, was only capable of rotational tracking. However, it boosted a 90-degree field of vision that was previously unseen in the consumer market. Luckey limited the distortion issues arising from the type of lens used to create the wide field of vision using software that pre-distorted the rendered image in real time. This initial design would later serve as a basis from which the later designs came. In 2012, the Rift is presented for the first time in an E3 video game trade show by John Carmack. And in 2014, Facebook, later dubbed Meta, purchased Oculus VR from what at the time was stated as $2 billion, but later revealed that was more accurate figure was $3 billion. The Oculus Rift was probably the most groundbreaking VR at the time. If you include into the future iterations, it's probably still to this date. I know when I think of VR and gaming, I always go back to the Oculus Rift. Now in 2013, Valve, the owners of Steam, discovered and freely shared the breakthrough of low persistence displays, which made lag-free and smear-free display of VR content possible. This was also adopted by the Oculus and was used in all of their future headsets. In 2014, Valve showed off their Steam Sight prototype, the precursor to both consumer headsets released in 2016. Getting into the more popular uses of the VR gaming devices, VR Chat was begun in 2014. It was a basic Windows application occasion for VR enthusiasts and was later launched on Steam in 2017, leading to a surge in players. It was created by Graham Galore and Jesse Gaudry. It functions as a social VR platform where users interact as customizable 3D avatars in a user-created worlds. VR chat was expanded to various VR headsets and a mobile version, evolving from a small community to a globally recognized platform known for its creative freedom and social interactions, among with some other questionable things that happen in VR chat, but we won't get into that. In 2016, Sandbox VR began as Glow Games, founded by Steve Zhao, initially developing consumer VR games before pivoting to location-based social VR experiences around 2017 to focus on fully immersive, premium group entertainment. This shift led to the development of their signature VR rooms, featuring full-body motion capture and other technologies, and the creation of a global entertainment franchises. I know a lot of bigger cities, including my hometown, had finally just gotten a Sandbox VR, and these experiences do seem really cool, and I highly recommend checking them out if you have a Sandbox VR near you. Now, possibly the most popular VR game to ever exist so far is Beat Saber. It was created in 2016 by Czech developers, and I apologize for this brutal pronunciation, Jan Ulvarsky and Vladimir Henrikars. They had experimental VR prototypes which featured their interest in volumetric lights and the initiative concept of slashing beats with lightsabers. Composer Jaroslav Beck joined the team to create the soundtrack. In the 2 years of development, the game was released into early access May 1st, 2018. Beat Saber quickly gained popularity as a top-rated VR game, leading to its full release, paid music packs, level editors, and its acquisition by Meta Facebook in 2019. Whenever I get the opportunity to use a VR headset, this is my go-to game. It is definitely fun, and I highly recommend checking it out. Through 2019 and 2020, the Oculus had released the Oculus Rift S and the Oculus Quest, along with the Oculus Quest 2. And in 2021, the Oculus Quest 2 accounted for 80% of all VR headsets sold. In 2023, Meta, or Facebook, released the Meta Quest 3, and this is where it switched from the Oculus to the Meta. It is the successor to the Quest 2. It features the pancake lens and the mixed reality features of the Quest Pro, as well as the increased field of view resolution compared to the Quest 2. Now finally, in 2024, Apple released the Apple Vision Pro. The device fully enclosed mixed reality headset and strongly utilizes video pass-through. It was largely marketed as a VR kind of device, VR/AR, but while the VR experiences are available on the device, it lacks the standard VR headset feature, such as external controllers or support for OpenXR, and is instead branded a spatial computer. So, virtual reality has a long and storied past, and it is ever growing into the future. We are not currently as advanced in virtual reality as past predictions have been made. However, the technology is ever advancing and at a more rapid pace. Who knows, it may only be a few years to decades before we end up with a virtual reality similar to the show Black Mirror, where we just take a little device, set it on the side of our head, and we're thrusted into a flawless virtual world that is almost indiscernible from reality. Thanks for watching my video of the bite-sized history of virtual reality. Please let me know any other bite-sized histories you would like to see in the future. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.